Oh, now we're live. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. So I'm Rebecca Skye, and I'm here with the Wattpad 4 girls, and we have a very special guest today. That would be Mindy McGinnis, author of A Female of the Species, among many other books. This book particular, we are all head over heels for. All four of us have read it, devoured it. We talk about it probably more than any other book we've ever all read together. So we're like really excited to have Mindy here today. I'm just gonna let the Wattpad for girls give themselves a quick introduction, and then you guys can get an introduction from Mindy, and then we're gonna jump right into the questions. If you have questions for her, tweet us on Twitter with the Wattpad 4 hashtag, and also keep an eye out because during the chat we're gonna tweet a chance for you to win a signed copy of one of Mindy's books. And you're going to want it.
I'm
okay.
Totally jealous.
Mm-hmm. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Sands, also known as Distant Dreamer on Wattpad. Hi.
Hi, I'm Leah Crichton, also known as LD Crichton on Wattpad.
Yeah.
And we have Quiet Erin.
Erin's having technical difficulties, but that is Erin Latimer, also known as E. Latimer on Wattpad. And finally, our guest, our spotlighted lady there.
Hi, I'm Mindy McGinnis, and I am on Wattpad, actually, under, I believe, Mindy McGinnis. And I wrote quite a few books. I have Not a Drop to Drink and In a Handful of Dust, which are post-apocalyptic survival in a world with very little water to drink. Then I wrote A Madness So Discreet, which is a gothic historical thriller set in an insane asylum. And followed that up with Female of the Species, which I think we're going to talk about quite a bit more here tonight. And then coming up real soon, October 10th, I have a new release, This Darkness Mine. I also have a fantasy series. Given to the Sea is the first one, and then Given to the Earth is the second and final that will be out in April of 2018. Given to the Sea is out now.
Crazy.
Wow.
Okay, well, how long has it taken you to write all those books? Because that's a lot of different series you have going on.
Well, to be honest with you, I write really quickly. I tend to write a book in 4 to 6 months, depending on the book.
Wow.
Now, A Madness So Discreet, I actually wrote in about 3 weeks.
Holy crap.
Wow.
I'm a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
Like I'm already kind of mad at you for writing this because like it's like my goal is to write a book this good. And now I'm even more hating. It's a love-hate relationship we have, Mindy.
I'm good. I have lots of those.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yay!
Yay, hallelujah. Sorry, guys. Keep going.
All right. Well, the main reason we brought you on here is because you have the ability to make the most humanistic characters we have read, and we want to pick your brain about that. And I know we all have tons of questions, and there's probably questions getting tweeted in. But Monica, you had some pretty good ones. You want to start?
Well, first, Species was amazing. I mean, as soon as I started reading it, I was just sucked right in. And I wanted to know, how difficult was it to get into Alex's headspace? I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it's dark. So, like, how did she come to you? And then how did you, like, was it easy to get into her mind?
Okay. Well, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler because it does happen in the first chapter to say that Alexs kills people. Alexs would be Dexter if Dexter was a high school girl who murdered rapists. She is acting out of uncontrolled emotion, and a lot of people say, is she a psychopath, or they want to characterize her as a psychopath, and that's actually the opposite of what I want to build with her, which I actually address directly in the book at one point, where she is reading about different mental disorders and trying to characterize herself, because she does kill people. And she says in the very first chapter, because she murders the man that killed her sister, and she says, I don't feel bad. And that's the first chapter. And the rest of the book is her trying to dismantle this feeling of not feeling bad, but at the same time, what drives her is emotion. So a psychopath doesn't feel the emotional ties to other human beings, which is what makes them capable of murder. Whereas Alexs, she defines herself as a wolf protecting her sheep being her female friends, and in the first instance, her sister. And so she is not acting out of a lack of emotion, but instead of, she says, I feel too much. She is trying to protect those that she feels cannot protect or defend themselves. In this case, her friends, her female friends, and her sister. So getting in her head was difficult at times because, not because I have a hard time getting into that headspace. It's actually pretty easy, to be honest with you. I personally feel so much anger and so much rage just reading the news. You can read, you know, national news, local news. It doesn't take much to find a story about rape or about an assault. You don't have to search hard to find those stories. And so I get very upset. And so it wasn't hard to get into the headspace of someone who can't control that anger, that has it turn into a bodily reaction that causes harm to other people. What made it hard to actually get into her head was the fact that I always think of my characters as real people. And thank you so much for all the compliments. But that is my biggest tip for other writers, is that consider them to be real people. They have to be real to you in order for you to make them real to the reader. And for me, Alexs, she didn't want to let me into her head. She is an extremely private person, and she did not want me in there tooling around trying to figure out what her deal was in order to write her. So getting in there was difficult at times, and I had to do a lot of, like I said, I would even look at the news and involve myself in nonfiction before I would attempt to write her chapters. And another trick that I used, particularly for this book, because it is told in multiple POVs, all three of them with distinctly different voices, was that I only wrote one chapter a day. So I was in that headspace, and then I just turn it off, and then the next day I'm on a new character and a new headspace and a new voice. I never wrote more than one chapter a day, because I think it would have been too difficult to flip those voices.
Mm-hmm. When you're,
did they ever kind of, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, did you ever feel like you were cutting yourself off midstream when you were in a character's head, or was it just easy just to shut it off and, you know, wait till the next day?
It was easy because each chapter is very much a scene. So it would be end scene, that little story. Each chapter is its own cut segment. And so I was able to be like, okay, I did my writing for the day. I wrote Jack's chapter, I wrote PK's chapter, I wrote Alex's chapter. That's my cutoff. What I would do, my process for this particular book was that I would read the chapter in the POV that I had written before. So sometimes the chapters don't regulate like on a cycle. Jack's chapter might have been 2 chapters ago. So I got to go back, read Jack's last chapter so that I can get his voice again. And then I write the new chapter for Jack that day. No, I didn't ever feel like I was cutting off midstream because of the fact that each chapter is its own arc and story and cutscene at the end. So no, I mean, I could definitely produce a full chapter with a consistent end every time and be done for the day.
When you're first developing your characters, when you first came up with the concept, how do you flesh them out? How do you get in their heads and figure out who they are to be able to translate it? Because like I said, this book shocked me how real they were.
Well, I give them a lot of freedom. For one thing, I think it's pretty obvious when you read this book that I didn't pull any punches when it comes to content, when it comes to language, when it comes to just about anything. I was writing teenagers as they are. Obviously, not all teenagers swear, not all teenagers go out and drink, but the ones in this book do. And so I let them. And I talked about it, and I used their words, and I let them be real teenagers without saying to myself, oh, is that going to make anybody mad? Screw that. I was writing real people, and I let them speak, and they used their words, and they went to their places, and they performed their activities like a real person, and I gave them that freedom. And I freely tell you that there were things that I wrote, especially in PK's first chapter. When I was writing PK, I was typing a lot of the things that she's thinking about as she's thinking about this breakup that she's going through and some of the things that she has done with her ex-boyfriend. And I was typing it, and I was like, "Ma, that's never going to get printed." And it made it. It made it. And I was so happy. I have to give full props to Ben Rosenthal, my editor at Catherine Teigen Books, who gives me a lot of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that's part of what made this book feel more real and the characters feel more real, that it was raw and dirty in places. It wasn't just you know, what people present on the outside. You like really showed all aspects of their personality.
Yeah, I think because you're
even the dark edges, the gritty parts.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add.
I just interrupted you for fun.
Oh, okay. I'm never sure if it's working or not. No, I was
you're
just going to add, I think you needed to add those gritty parts because the subject you're talking about is like, rape is like such a terrible thing. It's like, but it's such something that happens so often. So I think kind of dumbing down or like smoothing over the rest of real life would kind of ring false. So yeah, I really appreciated the book for being gritty.
Me too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that often when I am reading, and I completely understand the cover your ass aspect for writers and for their editors and for their publishing houses. I completely understand that need. But for my work, I don't agree with it. And I try not to let it happen. So I would rather be true, especially about something as, I don't want to say graphic because I don't think the book is graphic when it comes to the actual concept of rape, but it's a horrific thing. And so, as you were saying, in order to build this world and actually give this voice to the book of an overall gritty edginess, I can't have my characters not using 4-letter words or not participating in their own environment in a way that is real to teens. So I didn't cut any corners when it came. My mommy was really mad at me when she read this book. I'll put it that way.
Going back to earlier question, how do you first flesh out these characters? How do you first, you know, figure out who they are and get into their world? Because especially in this book, you really would have needed to.
Oh, definitely. They have voices, and I just let them talk. It's hard for me to teach anyone about writing because so much of what comes down to the nitty-gritty of any kind of technical aspect for me is that I just listen. And I know that that is this very ephemeral idea that is hard to tap into if it's not something you're accustomed to practicing. But my trick has been that if I'm thinking about the character and I'm thinking about who they are and what their life would probably be like, you have to take all of those elements and you build those and you think about those things. And often their voice, whatever their first line or their first chapter or their actual feeling of their character, it'll come to me right before I fall asleep. And I don't jot things down. Everyone says keep a notebook by your bed and write things down. And that's great advice. I don't do it. I just try to hold on to a feeling. Whatever this I get that is the character, I hold on to whatever that core concept is, and I sleep on it. And then I wake up, and usually there's a character there for me. In this, and I know that that's like the crappiest advice ever. I'm like, yes, just reach out to the cosmos and then take a nap.
It's called quantum jumping. There's actually a term for it.
Yeah. Is there really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, great. Now I have a term that I can
Yes.
Quantum jumping. Sounds so sci-fi.
Well,
I'm tapping into another world where there's people. I don't want to think about that. Okay. I will say that for the character of PK, one of my best friends when I was growing up was a preacher's kid. It was a boy, but he was a preacher's kid. And we were really, really close from like 4th grade through graduation. And he's a great guy. But, you know, he was a regular teenager. And so he wanted to be who he was. And every time he said a bad word, people were like, oh, preacher's kid, gonna tell your dad you said a bad word. And he was just like, son of a bitch. Like, it got so old for him that everything he said or did that was outside of that straight line, people would give him problems about it. And it was a really big aspect of me building PK. So there were elements of PK that I drew from my friendship with a preacher's kid growing up.
I really related to PK. My grandfather was a pastor, and I was kind of put under the same sort of unspoken set of rules and expectations. So I was like, yeah, I loved seeing, you know, her dark side, her reality, not her polished, you know, church girl side. I really like that. I think you did a really good job with that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I also loved her parents. Oh, I'm sorry. Jumping in. I was just going to say, I also loved her parents because I didn't feel
Yes.
like they were too preachy. And I think that a lot of people, just like you said about your friend growing up, that they think like, you know, once you're a preacher's kid or have any kind of religion, it's like everything is like, here's a Bible, you know? So
Right.
I really love the way you portrayed her parents just as regular, you know, I know what you're doing, just be careful, and, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It was important to me to have real parents in this book. Way too often in YA, this is something that people talk about. There are absentee parents, or the parents are written out, or they're dead. Like, that's really common. So I really wanted to have real parents. I had parents, and I was a teenager. My parents were great, and a lot of my parents is definitely in PK's parents. My parents were not naive, but they were very protective. Not in a bad sense, not in an umbrella, like helicopter sense, but they gave me many of the same speeches that you hear from PK's parents. And I think I put it in the book. I'm pretty sure I did. One of the things my dad always said to me, and I had PK's dad say it to her, was, there's nothing you can do that you won't be welcome at home.
I loved that part.
So that was always like,
yes.
Thank you. And that's something my dad said to me. So it was like, you know, if you are drunk, if you are like stoned out of your mind, if you're pregnant, you know, call me. I will come get you. I will help you. You don't have to, you're in deep shit, but you will come home and I will take care of you. Like, there was an unconditional love aspect that definitely had a feeling of, you know, first I'm going to love you, and then I will try to correct you. And so I really appreciated that in my parents. And I had wonderful parents in my friend group when I was growing up. Not in the sense they'd be like, hey, we're going to host a party, everybody come over. Not like that. But in a sense of, they were actively involved in their children's lives. I don't think any of them were naive, but I think they wanted us to have true teen lives within a safe environment. And that was something that I was really lucky. And I realize that now as an almost 40-year-old, that I had parents, not just my own, but in my friend group, that were not too controlling and not too lax, and just the perfect in between. And you don't see that in literature, in the YA canon, I don't think, very often. And so it was important to me to put that in there. PK's parents and Jack's mom too. Jack talking to his mom about his romantic relationships. I mean, I would talk to my parents about my boyfriend or, you know, whatever. And I really thought that that was something that you don't see enough either. So it was important to me to have real teens and also to have real parents in the book.
Mm-hmm. I think, Leah, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was just, all three voices are so distinctive, and like you said, they just spoke, but I'm curious, who came first? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Good question. Good question. Definitely Alexs. Alexs was first, and she was the hardest. Obviously, she's the main character and she is the catalyst. But because of the fact that she is harder to deconstruct, her motives are clear, but her own emotional interaction with her physical actions are sometimes harder to sparse. So she was difficult to break down and fully attempt to understand. Even though at a basic level, I'm like, yeah, I totally get you. But then at the same time, I don't think many people, luckily, many people in our world today have actually witnessed real physical violence. It is hard thing to see. It is gut-wrenching at times. And then that's why I wrote the scene with PK where she's like, you know what, I'm so mad, I'm just going to slap Branley. And she does. And then she's like, oh my God. And it just throws her because she can't believe she just did that. And she even like messes up the slap and doesn't do it right. And everything about it is a big mess. And like, that's what real violence is like. It's not a fight scene from The Matrix. Real violence is usually pretty ugly and performed by people that have no idea what they're doing. So that is something else that was important to me to get in there. And with Alexs being the hardest person to access, she was also the first because she's the catalyst of the story. The one I was most worried about writing was Jack, because I had never written a male voice before. And
What?
because
That was
it
your
is a
first?
feminist.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the first time I tried to do that. Hey.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just interrupted you, but that's amazing.
No, that's great. Hey, if you're going to interrupt me to compliment me, go ahead. Yeah, it was the first time I'd written a male POV. But I grew up with, I don't have brothers, but I grew up with really close, like, male cousins. They were all male. I've always been closer to dudes. Like, when I was growing up, all my friends were guys. And then even in high school, hi, kitty cat. Sorry. My kitty just came out from underneath the bed, and she kind of took me by surprise. When I was growing up, all my friends were dudes, and then in high school again. And I even as an adult, like, some of my closest friends are guys. And it is a feminist book, but I think it's important to have a feminist book and be a feminist and still acknowledge that it's not, feminism isn't anti-men. And I think that that's a really important point. And so I wanted to write a book with a sympathetic main character that's a dude that is still a good person, yet male. So when I was writing Jack, I would text my friends that are dudes, and I would be like, all right, this is a phrase I just made up as a euphemism for masturbating. Does it work? And they're like, yeah, that's pretty good. So
Awesome.
I had a question about the end, which I will not give away any spoilers. But was the big climax, like, do you plot in advance, and was that all planned?
no, not at all. I also will attempt to talk about this without. When I was writing this book, I did not know how it was going to end. I knew that I had to tread because I am writing about vigilante justice, and I cannot write a book that seems to endorse vigilante justice. And so I had to end this appropriately for the characters, for the world, and for the market. And I was really nervous about it. I didn't know how it ended as I was writing. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I told him, I was like, yeah, this is what the story is about. This is what's going on. And he was like, oh my God, how does that end? I'm like, I don't know. It's really, that was my cat. I was like, yeah, I don't know. That's going to be really hard. And so I just wrote the story, and I didn't know right up until my characters walked into the church at the end. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then when eventually everything falls out, I was like, oh my goodness. Oh, you're in my headphones? I was like, yeah, that's an appropriate ending. So I just came to an appropriate ending organically, which I think for me as a writer, I'm a complete pantser. And so that was the best way for me.
It seemed plotted to me, so that's a good sign.
Really?
Yeah.
So what comes to you? Is it just the character and the conflict, and then you figure it out as you write, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am the worst possible teacher when it comes to writing, because I'm like, yeah, I just write the book. I mean, it's true though, because I see the characters and I let them speak. Usually, I mean, I know the core of the plot. I know, like, for example, this book is a vigilante justice book. And so just knowing structure, not from taking any classes or anything like that, but from reading so many books over the course of my life, you absorb structure and plot points. And so I just wrote organically, and the story just unfolded. The ending, I think, is the only way it could have ended. And believe me, I get a lot of hate mail.
Yeah.
Really?
I thought it was
Well, I shouldn't say hate mail. I get
disappointed mail.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was definitely like, the ending made me sad, but it also made sense to me. Like you said, I closed the book and went, that was literally the only way it ended, that it could have ended. Yeah. It made sense. Yeah.
Wow.
We do have some questions. So you addressed this a little bit, but Leah says, do characters or plot come first, or are they so intertwined that you develop them at the same time? I imagine that you don't actually plot, but do you have any elements of the plot that come first?
I think the character, oh boy, that is a tough one. I think they do kind of happen simultaneously for me. Probably, actually the first thing that probably comes in most cases is the world. So if I'm writing, in my first book, Not a Drop to Drink, that is set in a world where there's very little water. And so I had the idea after I watched a documentary called Blue Gold. And so it's about the fact that we are running out of drinkable, potable water. And that's a really scary thought because we all have to have water in order to survive. If you don't have it, you'll die in 3 days. And the way that you die is graphic, it's horrible, it's nasty, it's really awful. I researched it quite a bit. So, oh my gosh, this world where people, there's not a lot of water, what would happen? And the answer is that things would go south real fast. People would be fighting each other. And so then I'm like, okay, story where we've run out of water, let's say 15 to 20 years after the water supply has been somewhat shut off as far as taps are concerned. What is that environment like? And who has survived there? What kind of person does it have to be in order to have survived that? So for Not a Drop to Drink, I think the easiest answer is that the world came first, and then my character, and then the plot. For Female of the Species, it's really hard to say because I got the idea for that book almost 15 years ago. And I wrote a first draft almost 15 years ago. And has absolutely nothing in common with the book that's on the shelves now because it was really awful. It was actually the first novel I ever wrote. Really not finishable. When I tried to read it as an adult, I was like, wow, that's really bad. No, it was terrible, trust me. I tried to read it when I sold the concept. I was like, this is great. I know I have the book already written, and I went back and I read it and I was like, this is not publishable. So I started from scratch and I wrote, the only thing that book has in common with that draft I wrote 15 years ago is the title, that's it. But because of Female of the Species is something that has been cooking for 15 years, I honestly can't say what came first, but I would think it would be plot. And then imagine the world then that is built from the plot and who these people are that are moving inside of this in order to facilitate the plot, but then also to engender growth among one another. I was in theater when I was in high school, and one of the best things that my theater director said to us was that changes when another character walks onto the stage, because you are reacting to that person, even just their presence. Something about you as a human being, as that character changes just because there's a presence, another presence on there, and you're going to change the way you stand or something because this person just arrived. And so I always think about that when I'm writing. Every character is either growing or even debilitating because of the actions and the presence of the other characters. And so they have to bounce off of each other in this world. And for me, that's what creates plot as I am going.
Mm. That's so cool. I always wish that I could do that, but I just sit there and like, I don't know what anyone's doing this.
Try it. I wish I could plot. I wish I could plot. I have critique partners that plot like crazy. Like they have cork boards and they have messages to themselves and they have yarn and it's like all Russell Crowe, beautiful mind.
Beautiful mind.
And it's just like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. I just sit down and write. And that's my way. I wish I could plot. I think it would probably be pretty cool, but it's
Do you
not
have
my way.
nothing, not a synopsis or anything before you go in?
Usually I have to have a synopsis just to sell the concept, but typically it's not a synopsis in the sense of this happens and then this happens and this happens. I say these are my characters and the basic idea is, you know, there isn't any water. And my editor has come to trust me and my process, and he'll even say, look, I realize that you don't know what happens in this book, but I need you to give me something that I can then pitch that we can sell. And I'm like, okay, fair enough, but I'll give you something, and I'll give you, sometimes I'll even turn in a synopsis and I'll be like, but this might not be what actually happens. And they're like, it's okay, we understand, we get you now.
Have you worked with that same editor for a while? For a few of your books?
I have worked with Ben for Amanda's So Discreet, The Female of the Species, This Darkness Mine, which comes out in October, and then I have an announcement that I can't make yet about a book that I will be working with on.
That's
There's
like a major
I
goal
can't
of
talk
mine.
about.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, it's a major goal of mine to develop that kind of relationship with my editor. So let's hope she still loves me.
He's wonderful. He's wonderful. I love him. We work well together, very well.
I had a question purely for my own curiosity. So you said you sold, I guess, on proposal a couple of times now? Yeah.
Actually, every single thing that I have written was sold on proposal except for Not a Drop to Drink, my debut.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
When was that out again? When was your debut?
2013.
Wow. Holy crap. You've published a lot of books since then.
Yes.
So you did you become a New York Times bestseller with this book or any of the others?
No.
Oh, that's shocking to me.
No.
Shocking.
I know.
No. Rebecca, you were gonna say something else.
I'm gonna hand sell this to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I forced it down these three and they don't regret it. So
yes. Oh my God.
No, I've never hit the NYT. A Madness So Discreet was it won the Edgar Allan Poe Award in 2015.
Yeah.
So that was
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. Super unexpected and really awesome.
What about a movie deal for this?
Yeah, we were all kind of hoping.
No word on that. Sorry, that's not my big tease. If that's what you were mining for.
It needs to be on the big
I do too. That would be cool.
Who would play Alex?
Have to be HBO.
Yeah, who would play Alex? You don't know.
I don't know because I don't have. I mean, I can't name you anybody under 40, so I don't know.
I feel like what's her name? Chloe. She played that girl in Kick-Ass, the little one, and she's like the perfect age now.
Yeah.
Is that Moritz?
I have no idea.
If I Stay or whatever, she was in that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's played a few bloodthirsty roles and she's quite good at it, being like the cold kind of, yeah, I could definitely see her in that role.
I don't know who that is, but I'm really bad. I don't follow pop culture like at all, except I have a few things that I really lock into, like Game of Thrones and when it was on. So it's like there's 2 or 3 things that I can talk knowledgeably about, but that's it. I just have those things.
We have a Twitter question again. I don't know if
we have a couple on the side too that I'm gonna go into first because they've been waiting. So Che Taylor says, "What is the best quality about a hero and or a villain?" So do you have anything that you want to include? Yeah.
I think the answer for both is that they both have to have both good and bad qualities, both the hero and the villain. In order for them to be real human beings, they have to have a gray area where even your hero has to have something about him that or her that isn't perfect, because otherwise that's super boring. And the best villains are the ones that you kind of like. So yeah, I think that's the best. Any character at all, they have to have good qualities and bad qualities. Obviously, you're going to accentuate some for heroes or villains, but make sure there's a little bit of everything in each character.
Technically, do you think of your characters in Female of the Species just kind of an anti-hero, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. I like to say with the book I have coming out, This Darkness Mine, that it's my very first unlikable narrator, even though I've written a 9-year-old that shot people from the roof and a girl that murders people with hammers. So
I'm intrigued.
Which one is the murdering 9-year-old? Because I'm reading that one next.
Not a drop to drink. Okay. Not a drop to drink. It opens with a 9-year-old sniping someone from the roof of her house to protect her water source.
Well, you've sold me.
Yay!
And what do you do when a character just stops talking? Because I think like when people think of writer's block, it's like, oh, I can't think of the next sentence. But sometimes it's the character that just,
It is the character. You're right. That's what writer's block is, I think, is when the character is done talking. Let them. let them stop talking, because they stop talking for a reason, I think. Maybe you don't know them well enough yet, I think, because if you think about the relationships you have in your real life, the people that you are absolutely closest to, when they stop talking, you usually know why, and you can kind of guess what's going on in their head. So if your character has stopped talking to you, it's because they might have stopped talking, but you need to know them well enough to know what's in their head, and go to internal narration and write that. And ask yourself a question: why did they stop talking? What just happened that made them shut down, either in the scene or on you as a writer? Like, what turned that character off, that they were done, that they signed out? And then what does that say about them? What does that mean about them as a human being? And how can I incorporate what I just learned about them into what they will say or do next?
Interesting. We do have one question over on Twitter. Fallon asks, was there a scene so dark that you found it too difficult to mentally go there? How did you face that darkness and write through it?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is no. I don't have any trouble. I don't have any trouble tackling anything. And that probably says a lot about me. But I look forward to writing those dark scenes. There's a scene in The Female of the Species where someone is burned alive, and I could not wait to get to that scene. I was like, man, that's going to be fun to write, you know? And so, I mean, that's one of my benefits to writing linearly and writing organically, because I knew that scene was in the future. Like, that was going to be a beat where it was like super exciting and stuff was happening, and I had to get there, and I make myself wait to get to that scene that I'm excited to write. So I'm writing the build up to that, and my excitement as a writer, I think you can see it in the book, where it's like you're building tension, you're building tension, you're building it, and someone just got set on fire. So, you know, you have that. I have my own tension building when I'm writing, because I'm looking forward to writing the scene. So I think that really helps inform everything that you've written, because there's always scenes that you're like, oh man, I cannot wait to write that. And I don't write those first. Like, some people say if you've got writer's block, you go ahead and write the scene that you're most excited about. And I actually disagree, because I think it takes some of the discovery out for you as a writer. I think that it's more important to say, okay, what has to happen next? What is the next step to get me to that scene that I'm excited to write? And then that contained, controlled excitement that you have inside of you for that scene that's on the horizon will be infused into the scenes that are building up to that next big one. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not hard for me to write the really dark things. I will say that A Madness So Discreet is the book that I wrote in 3 weeks. That was not a personal choice. There was some confusion about my due date that just happened to, there was just miscommunication on both ends. And I had the option of waiting a year, a full year of publication, or writing the book in 3 weeks. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna write the book in 3 weeks. So I did. And I will say that writing a book, because that is a Gothic historical thriller set in an insane asylum. It deals with lobotomies. It deals with criminal psychology. It deals with the early treatments for the insane, which are not pretty. And I researched for 18 months before I wrote the book. Everything was here. I just had to get it out. And so I will say that while there was no particular scene that bothered me when I was writing that book, the actual experience of writing that book in a dump of 3 weeks was not healthy, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Like, that was not healthy. But I also think that it made the book better, because I was totally there the whole time I was writing the book. I wrote it in huge sprints, and then I would, you know, take a bath because I needed to, and then I would come back and write another really long sprint. And I think you can actually feel that that intensity and that emotion, my own emotion, in the book, because it just added that experience of writing it at such a rush. I think it's in there. Like, I think it emanates from the book itself.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of method actors and like how they'll put
Mhm.
themselves through these crazy situations so they can like really get into the character and you can
Yeah.
see it in the film. So that's very interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was very important to, I don't know if I could have written that book in small spurts. I think it was important to be immersive with that. That being said, I should probably read it because I did write in 3 weeks. And I have people ask me questions about that book and they'll be like, well, what were you thinking in this scene? And I'm like, I don't remember that scene. I have no idea. So I should probably read it. I don't read my books once they're published because you are so involved with their process that you tend to be turned off by the actual content by the time they've hit the shelves. But that one, I think I could probably experience it just as a reader.
That's like every author's dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Although not being, rushed into writing a book in 3 weeks.
No.
I don't know. That's like a nightmare more than a dream.
Yeah, that's the nightmare. How long was that book? Like, what were you pulling off?
I think it's 85,000.
Oh my God.
Oh my Lord.
Mindy.
Yeah, I will say, I think I might have had 5 to 8K finished before I jumped in. But yeah, I think it was I probably wrote 80,000 words, in 3 weeks.
No wonder you felt slightly insane
Wow.
while you were writing it.
Oh, I did. I was completely on end.
Oh my God.
And I just had, there was one point where I had a pizza. Like I went and I got a pizza and I set it on the bed and I ate because I write in beds. And so I ate a little bit and then I would write and I was just writing as fast as I could and taking a break every now and then, like just to catch some air. And then I would reach over and get more pizza because I was hungry again, and the pizza was cold. Like that's like, I'd been sitting there just like banging out a story and to the extent that and then, at the end of the day, the whole pizza was gone and I had written 20,000 words or something. And I hadn't written 20, but close. Like, good work. Not healthy,
That's
but
crazy. How many words do you usually write in a day? I'm guessing 20,000 is not your normal.
1,000. That's my day.
Okay.
I try to write 1,000 words a day.
That makes me feel better than the 20,000 that you just said.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I aim for 1,000, which is 4 to 5 pages roughly. I always look for a organic cutoff point. And if I have a great cutoff point, like a wonderful one-liner or a great visual, I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I'm done for the day. So if that comes at 800, if it comes at 12 or 1,300, okay, cool. And then I'm done. Like there's always a really good fade to black scene. And when you hit it, I'm always like, all right, you're good. Unless you're on deadline, then you just reach over and get another piece of pizza.
Do you write even on the weekends?
No, I don't. Typically, I don't write unless I'm under contract. It takes a lot for me because it is so much work, like even like psychically taxing to write a novel. I only write when I'm under contract at this point in my life. I'm able to say that. And so like right now, I really need to jump in on something. But when I am writing, I usually say 5,000 a week. So Monday through Friday, 1,000 a day. And I give myself some leniency, right, until Friday. And if I haven't hit it, then I try to make up whatever I haven't written of the 5K. And if I haven't written 5K Monday through Friday, then yes, the weekend is mop-up time. And then you jump in with a clean slate on Monday.
Yeah, that's how I do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to ask, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? Is it something that came to you later on in life? Yeah, you did? Tell us your story of coming into writing.
Okay, so I always knew I wanted to be a writer. Mostly because when I was a kid, which was in the 80s, I had My Little Ponies, and this was 1980s My Little Ponies. We didn't have any of this Equestria Girls crap. So I had my 1980s My Little Ponies. Don't get me wrong, I love the Equestria Girls because they have awesome music. If you haven't listened to the Equestria Girls, oh my gosh, okay.
Yep. It's
awesome! I can rock out to the Equestria Girls. There are times when I have to turn down my radio in my car, like if I'm going through the drive-thru, because it's like I'm totally listening to My Little Pony music right now. Okay, so in the 1980s, I had My Little Ponies. And I loved them so much. Like, they were my life. I loved my My Little Ponies. And I played with them all the time. And I was always making up stories about My Little Ponies. And that creative play is storytelling. And I would do this. And then there was a My Little Pony TV show and a movie in the 80s. And I would watch it. I could even sing the theme song for you if you wanted me to.
Yes.
And it's not as catchy. It is not as catchy as the Equestria Girls music. So I would watch this show. And Applejack was always one of my favorite ponies. She was really cool, right? She was like the tomboy. I loved Applejack. And she was not the main pony. She was not getting a lot of her own storyline. She has more storyline. I'm talking too much about My Little Pony. Anyway. So I really like My Little Pony. All right. So I had Applejack was always my hero. But she was just a sidekick in the 80s. And so I would make up stories about Applejack. And now, we didn't have this term in the 1980s, but I was basically writing My Little Pony fan fiction when I was a little kid. And that was my favorite thing. I've always had a thing for sidekicks. I was always fleshing out the sidekick and giving the sidekick their own stories and giving them more to do and letting them be a hero even in their own stories. And I was writing. I didn't realize that. I thought I was playing. But I was writing. And so I started to realize this, and I think fan fiction is a great way for aspiring writers to learn how to write, and you don't have the pressure of character building and world building because it's already there for you. So you write fan fiction, then you test your chops out, and then you grow past that, and you have your own worlds and your own characters and everything already, you've learned how to do that. And so I knew that when I was growing up. I learned it, I should say. And then in 8th grade, we took one of those tests where it's like a personality assessment and your things you're good at and things you're bad at. And the proctor was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a writer, like conviction, right? And she's like, all right, cool, take this test. And I took it. And it came back and it said that I should be a cop. And I was like,
whoa.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think I probably would have been a decent cop, like, to be fair. But I was like, you know what? I don't think so. So I just always knew that's what I wanted to do. I went to college. I got a degree in English literature, 2 degrees, degree in English literature and a degree in philosophy of religion. And I like to say that having those 2 degrees taught me empathy more than anything. And that is what you have to have if you want to be a good writer. You have to be able to put yourself in anyone's shoes. You have to be able to put yourself in a cat's shoes, a dog's shoes, a bird. Like, you have to be able to project yourself into anyone appropriately and understand them. And so I think both of my degrees really helped me with that. They didn't really help me get a job, but they helped me be a better writer and that I had empathy. So out of college, I worked retail like everyone else. And I did eventually get a job as a librarian at a high school. And I did that for 15 years. I just quit this past year. And I really miss it. I really miss it a lot. But unfortunately, funding arts and libraries are the first things to go. And they were eliminating the aide position, which was my position. So they offered me a different position. And I was like, you know what, I'm good. So yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but it took about 10 years for me to get an agent. From when I had made that decision and said, this is what I want to do with my life, and this is a goal, it took me 10 years from there. 4 failed novels. My 5th was the one that actually was my first published. And I always tell aspiring writers, because I will do workshops and I'll meet 12 and 13-year-olds that are upset because they haven't finished anything. And I'm like, guys, I wrote my first novel when I was 23. It's okay. You don't have to feel like you have to write War and Peace when you're 12 in order to be an accomplished writer. You don't even have to finish anything. I finished my first novel when I was 23. So take heart from that.
I always love hearing everyone's different stories about how they came to publication and how before I got an agent and a book deal, it was very much like hanging on to these stories like, oh God, if you did it, I can do it. It took you 10 years. So it's always great to hear stuff like that and having people that have had longer journeys but still become incredibly successful. So
yeah, I think it's important. I started a blog in 2010. It's called Writer Pants on Fire. And that was kind of the idea for my blog, was that I wanted to share other authors because that's what I wanted more than anything when I was an aspiring. I wanted to hear published authors tell me how hard it was for them and what they did to push through and make it happen. And so I started a blog with that specific purpose. And then just this past March, I also started a podcast of the same name, Writer Pants on Fire. And those are both free and available to anybody. And
Writing it down.
I interview and I talk to, yes, Writer Pants on Fire. And I talk to, it's not focused on me, both the blog and the podcast I host, but I'm always speaking to other writers and talking to them about their journey, their agent hunt, their submission experience, covers, social media, like you name it, all aspects of the publishing industry, because I think it's really important for aspiring writers to be aware that when you're coming into this, you're not just a writer, you're going to end up being everything. Your feet hit the ground and you're a marketer, you're a publicity person, like you're everything. And so I think it's important for aspiring writers to be aware of that.
It is. We are coming into the last 5 minutes here. Is there any more questions on Twitter we should ask?
I think we've answered all of them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have a book coming out in October. Can you tell us what that one's about?
Sure. It's called This Darkness Mine, and it is about a girl who is very much your good girl, type A personality. She's a clarinet player, first chair clarinet. She is really involved in music, and she wants to go to Oberlin, which is a college here in Ohio, a really well-known musical college. She wants to go to Oberlin, and she's always led this completely like straight line good girl life. And her senior year, she starts to have what she would call bad impulses. She kind of wants to drink. She wants to smoke. She's attracted to kind of the rougher type. And she's like, oh my gosh, what is going on with me? Why am I behaving this way? And she finds an ultrasound. When she's searching for her baby picture for the senior yearbook, she finds an ultrasound that was her mother's ultrasound when she was pregnant with her. And there are 2 babies in there, but she doesn't have a sibling. She doesn't have a twin. And she convinces herself that she absorbed her evil twin's heart. And she's like, this is why I'm acting this way. It's not really me. It's my evil twin's heart. It's her impulses. And so the rest of the book is she crazy or is she right?
Oh my gosh.
I love that.
I need to read this again. I'm like, oh dear.
I'm like, I'm not supposed to buy any more books this month, but I'm already adding like Madness So Discreet to my list. And I'm like, oh, well.
The cover for that is like the most beautiful cover.
Yeah.
Madness, yeah. The photographer that did that, her name is Brooke Shaden. She's actually pretty famous in photography circles, and she is actually the model as well as the photographer for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
you have some really good covers.
Cool person. I have amazing covers, and I have absolute faith in my publishing team, both at Catherine Segan and at Putnam. Putnam did my fantasy covers, and I have just been really fortunate, just all the way around.
That's cool. Well, we have only a couple minutes left. Is there anything else you want to tell anybody? You can't give us any more hints of the top secret thing?
I can't talk about the top secret thing. The kitty that walked through here, her name is Minnow. I always talk about my cats a lot online, so people are probably like, what cat was that? That was Minnow. She was the runt of a group that I had to raise from bottles. They were abandoned, and so I raised them from little bottle feeding. Yeah. And so that was Minnow. She's a tiny little runt. She's a polydactyl. She has thumbs. And that's really it. It was important for me to tell you about my cat.
Thank you. I'm glad you did. That was important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little glimpse into my life. I bought a new mattress yesterday.
Oh, man.
That was important.
You're going to get no work done now. You're just going to sleep all the time.
Well, actually, it is important because I write in my bed. I write in my bed. And that's what I have right now freaking sucks. I think it was my sister's wedding present, and she ended up giving it to me. And I think my sister got married 20-some years ago.
Wow.
So, no, that can't be right. That seems like a lot. No, that might be right. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a really old mattress. So I went and I bought a new mattress yesterday. It's the first time I've ever bought a mattress. Felt like an adult. I'm almost 40. And I walked in there and I was like, I need to buy a mattress. Like, I don't know about you.
Did you test them all out? Were you like laying on each bed?
Let me tell you something. There is nothing weirder than when you go into a mattress place because you lay down and then someone stands at the foot of the bed and talks to you
And like covers
about the mattress that you're laying on. And they're like, this one has, you know, something coil springs. And I'm like, oh my God. There's nothing. It's so surreal. You're like, I'm laying on a bed and there's a stranger talking to me about money.
It's not acceptable in any other circumstance.
No, absolutely not at all. It's just like, I had a hard time keeping a straight face because it's just, I find everything funny. People don't. You read my books and they're really, really dark, and people meet me in real life and they're like, oh, you're actually kind of normal, and it really throws them. But yeah, so it's like, it really is weird. I just, everyone, be prepared for that when you go mattress shopping, because people are, you walk in and they're like, please lay down. And I'm like, oh.
I also find mattress shopping really distressing because they're like really aggressively trying to sell you mattresses too while you're lying down.
It's like buying a car. It's like my car. Well, and I think that there's something there too, because you are lying down. You feel vulnerable. You're on your back. And they're like,
aggressively pitching you.
You could be a stomach sleeper and just ignore them.
Yeah. Put the pillow over your head.
They ask you that. They're like, do you sleep on your side or on your back? And I'm like, you don't even know that.
None of your business.
That is not your business. And they're like, I want you to lay down the way that you would lay down when you're sleeping. And I'm like, I'm not doing that in front of you. I knew that was an important thing to talk about.
It clearly was. And now everybody who's buying new mattresses will know what to do. They know
You've been warned.
Yeah.
Your next book is going to be
out there, guys.
Your next book is going to be about like someone buying a mattress and I don't know, goes they get murdered or something.
About a mattress salesman. It'll be about a mattress salesman.
And he's super creepy. I mean, that.
No, he's gotta be. He's a mattress salesman. I mean, come on. How do you even talk about that? Like when you're at a party, it's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a mattress salesman. Like, that's rough.
He'd probably be like, I'm a sleep enhancement specialist.
I like that one.
I analyze people's sleeping patterns. Yeah. You know, you watch people lay down.
That means you look at people's windows at night.
Yeah.
And on
that, the guy that told me my mattress was really nice, and I was just like, I feel weird that I feel creeped out, but I feel creeped out.
I think it's normal.
I made everyone cry. Okay.
Okay, on that really awesome transition, we're going to transition back to this book. For those of you who are watching, the Wattpad 4 has a challenge for you. Read the first page. If you're not intrigued to keep reading, buy it. If you aren't intrigued, tell us why. We're curious, because we all think you will want to keep reading. And thank you so much, Mindy. You are a wealth of knowledge and spunk, and we love it. It was so awesome having you with us.
Great.
All right. Bye, everybody. You can find us on Twitter. We'll still be popping around answering questions. And check out Mindy. Check out her other books.
Bye.